Good evening. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, 39 years old and a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and the leader of the nonviolent civil rights movement in the United States, was assassinated in Memphis tonight. A sniper's bullet cut down Dr. King as he stood on a hotel balcony in Memphis. Within an hour, Dr. King was dead. That happened at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The nation was shocked. President Johnson expressed horror and then postponed his trip to Hawaii until tomorrow. We're going to go to Memphis now and talk to ABC's Tom Gerald, who is on the scene.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do
Meanwhile, television was telling the story of other civil rights campaigns. The Reverend Martin Luther King was leading the blacks of America down a non-violent road towards equality and freedom.
Have demonstrated that non-violence is not sterile passivity, but a powerful moral force.
It's not, we have never taken any position that nonviolence was either cowardly or, what was the other thing?
Subservient.
Subservient. That's not even the issue.
That powerful refrain was taken up by the Catholics of Northern Ireland. The first civil rights march in Northern Ireland was between two modest country towns in County Tyrone in August 1968. Liberal Protestants and Catholics, many enjoying for the first time the benefits of free university education, took to the streets of Belfast. Among them, a student leader destined to become the youngest woman MP ever elected to the British Parliament, Bernadette Devlin. As 1968 drew to a close, Ulster's divisions were being paraded for all to see. The civil rights movement had brought the two communities onto the streets of Northern Ireland in a battle of will. Even more entrenched positions were being taken up. No surrender, not an inch. Reforming Prime Minister Terence O'Neill was caught in the crossfire.
What kind of Ulster do you want? A happy and respected province in good standing with the rest of the United Kingdom? Or a place continually torn apart by riots and demonstrations and regarded by the rest of Britain as a political outcast? As always in a democracy, the choice is yours. I will accept whatever your verdict may be. If it is your decision that we should live up to the words, Ulster is British, which is part of our creed, then my services will be at your disposal to do what I can. But if you should want a separate, inward-looking, selfish and divided Ulster, then you must seek for others to lead you along that road, for I cannot and will not do it.
But the choice was never offered, and within a few months, O'Neill faded from the political scene. As 1969 dawned, Ulster was on the march. Catholics for civil rights, Protestants against change. On New Year's Day, a student march left Belfast on the long trek to Northern Ireland's second city, Londonderry. With the advantage of surprise of the high ground, loyalists attacked. With police confusion, some said collusion, the marchers were virtually defenseless. Those who could joined the police in flight, others were not so fortunate. Bloodied but unbarred, the marchers arrived in Derry, as the Catholic majority there prefers to call the city. They were given a hero's welcome. For Catholics, the crusade now seemed unstoppable. Protestants were unmoved and unwavering. Within months, Derry's Catholic bogside had become a cockpit of resistance. And as pressure mounted, civil rights leaders appealed for only non-violent protest. Potential weapons and troublemakers were removed.
The secondary question, the question is, what is the problem?
But the dam was about to burst. In April '69, an exhausted and demoralized police force withdrew from Catholic ghettos. For the next 3 years, they would be no-go areas. Within the walled city, there was loyalist triumph. In the Catholic estates below, deep resentment. Once a year, in August, Protestants, a minority in the city, reclaim Derry, symbolically. Barricaded behind police lines, Catholics have their own musical message. A clash of anthems, a clash of old loyalties. The first stone was cast. Within minutes, a full-scale riot was underway. On one side, stones and petrol bombs. On the other, choking CS gas. The fire had been lit.
As an Irishman, I'm reluctant to accept any degree of British rule, but when the house is burning, I suppose you don't ask whether the fireman's a Protestant or a Catholic. There must come a promise of a completely new deal here, and I think that Dublin, Belfast and London must get together. It's too early yet to say just what the outcome will be, but already the harm has been done. The 50-year-old dam that has been building up has been burst, and well, it's over to God after that.
God and British troops deployed on the streets of Northern Ireland for the first time the following day. After 50 years of indifference, Ulster was now a colonial problem on Britain's own doorstep. Troops would buy time.
Peter, can I take the prisoner's hood off?
Why do you want to do that?
Poor her suffocating in the heat.
So?
Anyway, you've seen her faces.
You've seen your face.
Yeah, and he saw Jude as well. Peter.
Look, if you don't mind I'm saying you, I don't mind, but you're the only one he looks at.
Right, thanks.
It's your decision.
Leave him to me, Jude.
My pleasure.
In the wake of the soldiers, the politicians. A visibly shaken cabinet minister arrived to sort things out, as he hoped.
Engaged. My sympathy, you have engaged my energies. I will apply myself within the limits of my responsibilities to this problem. I cannot pretend to attempt to find a solution to it overnight. I can, however, pledge that my energies are at the disposal of the people of Northern Ireland.
Thank you, soldier. Never thought fresh air would taste this good. No, if you loosen my hands, I can feel myself.
No fucking way.
I'm only joking. You know, I was wrong about one thing.
In Belfast, the situation had deteriorated rapidly, and faced with serious threat from their Protestant neighbours, Catholics welcomed British troops in preference to what they saw as a partisan police force. Bewildered British troops were caught in the middle. The temporary peace lines they erected are now a permanent feature of the city. The warm welcome for the soldiers melted away rather more quickly.
The honeymoon period for the use of troops can be very short-lived. I think we're probably at the top of the peak of the honeymoon period now. If, for example, something very constructive and helpful doesn't come out of the meeting in Westminster tomorrow between the Prime Ministers and Ulster, when all sides feel that there is some hope, then the honeymoon period could finish in a matter of hours.
The general knew his politics better than his political masters. Soldiers are not policemen, and within days that was becoming obvious, painfully obvious. Restrictions on movement in Catholic areas caused widespread resentment. So too did their understandable ignorance of the Irish problem. Within weeks, the liberators had become the oppressors. In response, troops cracked down heavily on Catholic areas. Pitched battles ebbed and flowed along the city streets. Ancient folklore had become day-to-day reality for the children of the Troubles.
Hey.
What is it now?
You're gonna have to do it, aren't you?
Do what?
tell me.
What makes you think that?
You're not going to let the guy out. And you're going to have to kill me.
They'll let him out.
You want to bet?
I'm not a gambling man.
And even if they do, you can't just let me loose.
Why can't we?
Not in your nature.
What do you know about my nature?
I'm talking about your people, not you.
What the fuck do you know about my people?
Only that you're all tough, undiluted motherfuckers, and it's not in your nature to let me go!
But something more sinister was stirring behind the barricades. Within the Catholic community, there were many who still believed in the force of arms, who cherished and commemorated the memory of the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, who had sought to drive the British from Ireland in the Easter Rising of 1916, and sporadically since. From the 1950s, though, the IRA had been a spent force. Old men, forgotten men, yesterday's men.
Here, hold up, where's Victoria?
But the return of British troops to Irish streets breathed new life into the Republican movement. In the back streets, but in the glare of world media attention, a new provisional IRA emerged. The gun and the bomb would be their answer to the Brits. The threat of a new terrorist campaign forced the Unionist government back to an old remedy. Internment, imprisonment on suspicion, confinement without conviction. On the 9th of August 1971, troops and police swooped. Over 200 people were placed in specially prepared internment camps. Most were small fry. The big fish had escaped the net. Follow-up military operations in Catholic areas produced the evidence that the Unionist government wanted to justify internment. Republicans, nationalists, Catholics were arming for revolution.
Secondary question. The question is, what is the problem?
As a strategy, internment was a political disaster. It was yet one more assault on civil liberty. On Sunday the 30th of January 1972, anti-internment march left Derry's Cregan estate. On Sunday the 30th of January 1972, anti-internment march left Derry's Cregan estate. Their way barred to the city centre by British paratroopers, the ritual stone-throwing began. The army's response was restrained at first. Another day, another riot. Then the first shot was fired. The people of Derry buried their dead. In London, the British government set about planning the demise of the Northern Ireland Parliament in Stormont. With British troops now so heavily committed to the Ulster conflict, the Unionist government of Belfast could no longer be tolerated. Unionists were outraged.
People of Ulster, I'm speaking to you at this moment still as the Prime Minister of Northern Ireland.
The organisers of this civil rights march promised that this would be non-violent. The army have said throughout the day that they hope to use minimum force. But 3 hours after the procession began, this has ended up, as dusk comes onto the bogside, as the worst ever confrontation between the army and the Catholic people of the Craigan and Bogside.
Do not fire back for the moment! Unless you identify positive targets!
Father, how many dead have you seen in the Bogside?
Appearing to be dead. There are the 3 in that Saracen car. There are 2 men lying at the end of this block of flats. There's another man at least very close to being dead. There are 2 others up there. I'm told that there are some more in these flats here that I haven't seen yet. I would say there are probably about 4 dead at this moment. I don't know what those are doing, whether they're alive or dead, but they seem to be very dead, and they're thrown in as if they were dead meat.
Take up my wallet. I want you to do something for me. I want you to find her out. Tell her I was thinking of her.
Jay Davidson in The Crying Game.
Spotted at a party in London, he was plucked from obscurity and catapulted to fame with a hit movie and an Oscar nomination. While this first-time actor did not win, Jay Davidson was one of last night's most talked about nominees.
Colonel, once the paratroopers went into the Bogside, there seemed to have been a very large number of casualties.
Well, I suppose large. 5 is quite large in these circumstances. It's unfortunate. But when we got up there, past William Street here where we're standing, and up towards Rossville Flats, we came under fire. We came under fire from the bottom of the flats, from the flats. We were also petrol bombed, and some acid, in fact, was poured on us from the top of the flats.
Local people are saying that you used excessive force when you went in there.
Well, what is force? If you're being fired at, you return fire, and they know that perfectly well.
How many gunmen do you feel you've hit in the Bogside?
Well, I'm told from my quick sit rep, you must understand it's a very quick sit rep, that 3 gunmen were hit. We have not got the weapons, but this is the usual thing. We saw people come forward. I'm not going to say that I saw weapons taken away, because I don't know yet. I have not spoken to the men on the ground, although I was forward when the shooting was going on.
You have no worries about this action?
None at all.
Local people have also said that you were disrespectful, or troops were disrespectful and flung around the bodies of dead Bogsiders.
Well, I'm sure we did not. In fact, I was there when those bodies were recovered, and I ordered, in fact, the vehicle to go forward to pick them up. We did not know at that stage whether they were dead or whether they were wounded, and the vehicle went forward under the very real threat of fire, because we were still being fired at that stage.
How do you feel about today's operation in the Bogside?
Well, I think any of these sort of operations are unfortunate. We shouldn't have to do it, but they put us in a position where we can do no other. When we're fired at, we must protect ourselves.
No, son.
You're no pin-up.
No?
No. You're not handsome at all.
Are you trying to hurt my feelings?
No. It's the truth.
Well, I could say the same thing about you.
Could you?
But I won't. We're more polite around these parts.
So I've noticed.
Dolly, Dizzy? Well, here they are. This is Charlie Parker and the famous Dizzy Gillespie. Now, fellas, Leonard says I'm supposed to be the Toastmaster, the sort of the Georgie Jessel J. So, Charlie, I want to award you now.
100 persone là dentro e la metà sono sassofonisti.
Ah, non è una novità. È solo Dizzy Gillespie che si fa pubblicità. Mi ricordo Parker 8 anni fa a Kansas City. Non riusciva a suonare Come to Jesus a 4 quarti.
An extraordinary event is about to take place. In a quiet corner of Northern Ireland, the pain caused by terrible violence will be confronted. At Ballywalter House, victims and perpetrators prepare to meet. And coming to guide them, the world's greatest champion of truth and reconciliation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good morning.
Archbishop Tutu will chair face-to-face meetings between victims and men who inflicted violence.
A large bang, like an earthquake. Yeah, it sounded like an earthquake, to be honest.
Did you hear people maybe mentioning IRA?
Yes, I heard. Well, basically, a lot of people just panicking.
Non ti prendere confidenze, bello. Quello ha suonato con Benny Moto, ma tu non sei nessuno. Suona un refrain e scendi giù.
I do not regret the fact that I was involved in the IRA. As a matter of fact, I'm very proud of it.
I joined because I wanted to kill Catholics. You're out to kill. You're out to kill as many British soldiers as possible.
Allora, vieni un po' sul coraggio, dai. Come ti chiami?
Charlie.
Dove sono?
Qua e là.
Signore e signori, questo è Charlie, del famoso qua e là.
Niente male. Dai, scendi adesso. Dai, scendi.
Ma che... Ma che... Non è un novizio, è Charlie, del qua e là.
Charlie del famoso qua e là.
The perpetrators will be questioned directly by the victims.
I have nothing to gain by this.
You said you had your hand on the gun.
Yes,
on
I
the
kept trying to
trigger.
weapon.
So if your hand was on the trigger, who pulled it?
My husband went in to rescue people and they blew him up. Now, do you think that is fair that people do that?
No.
You said yourself you were out to shoot a gunman. You were angry?
I was angry.
You were very
yes. I
angry.
was
You were
angry.
out for revenge.
Will you forgive me? Can you?
We expect, obviously, that all who come here are telling us the gospel truth.
In this programme, one of the most notorious figures of the conflict comes face to face with victims of his violence. The former loyalist paramilitary Michael Stone was sentenced to more than 600 years in prison, but was released under the Good Friday Agreement. Now he meets the family of Dermot Hackett, a Catholic man he murdered. The Hacketts have waited years for this day. In 1988, Michael Stone achieved worldwide notoriety when he attacked an IRA funeral and killed 3 people. An attack caught on film. He became a hate figure for nationalists, but a hero to militant loyalists. After his arrest, Stone admitted 3 other murders. One of them was Dermot Hackett, ambushed in 1987 as he drove his bread van to work. Dermot Hackett was 37 and married with a young daughter. His wife was pregnant with their second child. Michael Stone claims he was a member of the IRA, a claim which infuriates the Hackett family. Dermot Hackett's brother Roddy, wife Sylvia and daughter Sabrina want to challenge Michael Stone.
To become We understand good morning. I want to welcome you, Ms. Sylvia Hackett, your brother-in-law, Rodi, and Sabrina, you too, Mr. Michael Stone. You have taken a very courageous and important step forward by being together at the same table.
Take out my wallet. I want you to do something for me. I want you to find her out. Tell her I was thinking of her.
Jay Davidson in The Crying Game.
Spotted at a party in London, he was plucked from obscurity and catapulted to fame with a hit movie and an Oscar nomination. While this first-time actor did not win, Jay Davidson was one of last night's most talked-about nominees.
Whitehall Street this morning as Prime Minister's Major was in session with his war cabinet. Early reports indicate that the government district was hit by mortar fire, perhaps launched from a van parked outside the Defense Ministry and less than 200 yards from number 10 Downing Street, the official residence of the Prime Minister. There's been no report yet of casualties, and officials there have sealed off the area today, Thursday, February the 7th, 1991.
From NBC News, this is Today with Bryant Gumbel, Deborah Norville, and Joe Garagiola.
Good morning and welcome to Today on a Thursday morning. As we greet you, this is a troublesome Thursday. Within just the past 2 hours, we have seen this attack in London that is scrambling all the authorities there. Let's vary from our usual format and go direct to London. With me on the phone line now from London is BBC engineer Charlie Burton. He was working in the area and was an eyewitness to the attack. Mr. Burton, good morning. What did you see and hear?
Good morning. I heard 3 explosions at the time I was working at the rear of Downing Street. One of them was actually in the garden of number 10 Downing Street, approximately 30 feet away from where I was standing at the time. I also saw a 4th mortar bomb that hadn't gone off, which landed on the grass about 20 feet away from me.
Non è un novizio.
That lay there. It was a kind of cylinder, 3-foot-long cylinder, which lay there smoking. We were then evacuated out of Downing Street, and I saw the vehicle, which was a van, in flames, less than 150 yards away, actually on Whitehall.
Did you ever see anything to indicate, other than the fact that it was ablaze, that van was actually involved in the attack?
No, I did not, except that the van was missing part of its roof, which would suggest that the mortars actually came from inside the van.
What was the level of activity on the street at the time, Mr. Burton?
It was very high activity. A lot of police arrived at that point, but at the time that the mortars were actually fired, it was very low activity. There were very few people around number 10 or around Horse Guards Parade. It was actually quite lucky, really, that there weren't a lot of people around.
Ambulances are on the scene. Have you seen any sign of casualties or injuries?
None whatsoever. As far as I'm aware, no reports as yet of casualties.
What about structural damage?
Apparently there was some structural damage to number 10 from the one that exploded in the garden.
Were buildings in the area evacuated?
Yes. Or, the whole area was evacuated. The whole of Downing Street, Whitehall were evacuated.
All right, Mr. Burton, thank you very much. Let's go to the studios of London Sky TV this morning, where joining us there is Paul Beaver of Jane's Defense Weekly. Mr. Beaver, we're hearing this was a mortar attack, but we also heard an earlier report that it was a rocket attack. Could we be talking about one and the same? What's your assessment?
Yes, good morning. Yes, what we're talking about here is an attack using homemade mortar bombs.
Daylight. It was the closest thing since a bomb exploded near former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's room in a Brighton hotel 7 years ago. ABC's Barry Dunsmore is in London.
The British cabinet had just arrived at the Prime Minister's residence to discuss developments in the Gulf War. Moments later, a mortar hit in the back garden. The reverberation shook the front door and shattered the cabinet room windows. Only 200 yards away, a white van with a hole cut in its roof was in flames. Police say 3 mortar rounds had been launched from the van. The fire was caused by a booby trap device. 2 men were seen running away just before the explosions. The audacity of the attack has shocked Londoners. The van evidently stopped for several minutes just outside the Ministry of Defence on Whitehall. This is a public thoroughfare which runs through the heart of the British political establishment. The home of the Prime Minister at 10 Downing Street is just off Whitehall. Besides the mortar shell in the garden, 2 other mortars hit close to the Foreign Ministry just across the street. The British Parliament is only another few hundred yards away. The terrorists came within just a few feet of succeeding in what Prime Minister Major said was their goal.
A deliberate attempt this morning both to kill the cabinet and to do damage to our democratic system of government. It failed, and we rightly treat them with contempt.
Whatever the coincidence with terrorist threats by Iraq, British officials denied any linkage.
Can I say straight away that this is the work of the Irish Republican terrorist groups, and you should discount from your minds any connection whatsoever with any Arab terrorist organisation.
As discouraging as it is that the IRA has once again almost taken out the British cabinet, there is actually some relief in this capital tonight that it was the IRA which was apparently responsible, and not the Iraqis.
As 30-year-old male nurse David Heffer became the first fatality of the IRA's current campaign in the capital, the pursuit of the bombers turned into a murder hunt. After a day-long battle for life at University College Hospital, Heffer's family took the heartbreaking decision to turn off his life support machine just after 7:30 last night. Today, London's pubs were put on full alert following the IRA's threat to continue its attacks until the British declare their intention to withdraw from Northern Ireland. To avoid IRA atrocities like this latest, police urged the capital's publicans to observe levels of vigilance last seen during the 1970s. They suggest frequent searches of premises, particularly private areas like toilets, where it's thought the Covent Garden bomb was left. More and more publicans are also turning to security cameras, which may help deter bombers. Meanwhile, anti-terrorist police want to talk to anyone who was in the area of the Sussex pub in the hour before Monday's lunchtime attack who may have any information.
By the time of Billy Wright's funeral, loyalists had killed one Catholic in revenge and were preparing to kill others. As 1997 ended, people's hopes for a peaceful new year were shattered.
It's like going back to a nightmare we thought we'd left behind us.
Nobody could want to go back to what we've endured for the last 27 years, because an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind.
It's probably the most difficult and dangerous time since a ceasefire.
It's a sorry state of affairs, but that's the way it is in Northern Ireland. If there's a political vacuum, it always is filled by violence.
On New Year's Eve, that's exactly what happened. As revellers gathered in this bar, loyalists returned to familiar territory. 1 man died and 5 other Catholics were injured when 2 gunmen opened fire.
One man come in the name of love. One man come and go. One man come here to justify. One man to overthrow.
The LVF, the group set up by Billy Wright, said they carried out the shooting. To local nationalists, the attack was no surprise. Nearly a quarter of those killed in the Troubles died in North Belfast.
People are putting extra bars on their front doors, on their back doors, or obviously taking extra personal security, leaving home, going to home, changing the routes again, changing the routes of the directional routes going to work and coming from work.
Since the first ceasefires, Liam Maskey has worked with community leaders from adjoining loyalist areas to foster better relations. Now he feels that much of that work could be lost.
I'm 41 years of age now, and I'm reminded of the early and mid-70s once again, and that's one of the more frightening, annoying and angering aspects of this, because when I see what we went through and what people went through in the early and mid-70s, I, for one, dread the thought of our young people having to live what we lived, when I think that we're so near of making some kind of direction towards making some kind of reconciliation.